Good evening. It is always an honor to come up here and speak to you and give you a short lesson. When I was a state trooper, one of the best things about my job was interacting with people. I love to interact with people, both good and bad, believe it or not. The bad ones were kind of fun and challenging. See if I could get them caught in their lies and their deceits and try to get them to confess. And so that was a challenge. And so after a few years, I really got good at reading people. And so I would use this talent on traffic stops. I would be able to tell who I could mess with on a traffic stop. Because you have to have fun at work. Okay? So it never failed. When I wanted to get off on time, I would always come across something. Someone would do something dumb in front of me where I had to make a traffic stop, do an arrest, and I wouldn't get off on time. And on this particular day, I wanted to get off because one of my children were having a game. And so I'm trying to make it home, and sure enough, it's dark, it's in the fall, so it's, you know those turnarounds for authorized vehicles only on the freeways? Someone decided to do that right in front of me. They couldn't see in the dark my fully marked Chevy Tahoe police package car. And so, of course, he's getting off on the ramp, and I turn my emergency lights on and I pull him over. It is a green truck. It has a white S in the back window. On its license plate, it has one of those little Spartan helmets. And as I walk up, the gentleman is wearing a green sweatshirt with Michigan State University on it. And he, right away, as soon as I get up there, he's like, "Oh, trooper, I am so sorry. I know better. And I missed my exit, and I saw it there, and I apologize. Won't do it again. You know, I have a really good driving record." And I said, "Well, thank you so much for that information. I really appreciate that." I said, "But you have two problems here today." And he goes, "Two?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Yes, you used the turnaround that you weren't supposed to." And he goes, "Okay, what's the other one?" He goes, "You got stopped by a trooper who is a University of Michigan fan." And he says, "That is a problem." I said, "But you know what? I am going to show you that us U of M fans are very kind, loving, patient, and forgiving. So I'm going to give you two choices today." He goes, "Okay." I said, "The first is I walk back there, I write you a ticket for using the unauthorized turnaround, and then you go on your way. Or you can give me a go blue, and you get a warning." He says, "Sir, I'm an alumni." I said, "You know what? I love loyalty and I love dedication. I'll be right with you." And I started to walk away to go back to my car, and all of a sudden I heard this voice, Sir? And I said, "Yes?" He goes, "Now, mind you, we're on the ramp off of I-96, and all of a sudden he starts doing this." And so I start doing it. I'm like, what is he looking for? Well, then he closes his eyes. "Go blue." I said, "Thank you, sir. I'll be right with you with your warning." Came back, said, "Sir, here's all your paperwork. Please don't use that. It's not safe. If you pull out in front of cars doing 70, 80, 90 miles an hour, it can cause a mess. So please don't do that for your safety." He goes, I said, "You have a good night." He goes, "I don't know if I'm going to do that." And then he goes, "Can I ask you a question before we leave?" I said, "Sure." "Would you really have given me a ticket?" I said, "Absolutely not. I'm just messing with you." And he's like, I knew I should have, stuck to my guns." And so I went out, and I had a good night anyways. David was going up to see his brothers and check on him for his dad. His dad was worried about him, so he was sending him some food and says, take this to your brothers and your commanders and check on them. Let me know how they're doing. And he gets there, and he really cannot believe what he's seeing. You know, from our scripture reading, this Philistine is coming out and challenging the Israelite army. And he's shocked because the Israelite army is not responding the way he thinks they should. And he says to them in 1 Samuel 17:26, what will be done with this man who kills this Philistine and removes the disgrace from Israel? Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? Here he shows up and he sees this and he is just cannot believe it. And he can't believe that this army is doing this. And his brothers, can you imagine, they're not very happy with this little teenager coming in here and saying, you know, looking all brave when they're supposed to be the ones who are brave. And he says, I just cannot stand here and do this. And he even goes up to the king and he says, King, let me do this. Let me go after this Philistine. I'm not going to let him defy God. And, you know, Saul is like, who is this kid who thinks he's going to do this? And what does he do? He says to him, the Lord who has delivered me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will deliver me from this Philistine. So Saul gives in and says, if you want to go do this, if you're the only Israelite who will do this, go ahead. I'll even give you armor and this and that. And he puts it on and he can't wear this stuff. He doesn't need it. And he goes out there. And as he approaches this giant, the giant is like, are you kidding me right now? Am I a dog that you're sending out a stick that I am just going to break? And David doesn't change his thought process here. In 1 Samuel 17:45, he says, you come against me with the sword and the spear and the javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Almighty Lord, the God of the army of the Israelites, whom you have defiled. This day, the Lord will hand you over to me, and I will strike you down and I will cut off your head. Today I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds of the air and to the beasts of the field. And the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. All of those who gather will know that it is not by the sword or the spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord, and he will give you all into our hands. You know what I find kind of interesting is that prior to David deciding to do this, is there any scripture there that talks about that he went off and prayed to God and said, hey, Lord, I really don't like this guy. I was wondering if you could help me out. If you give me the strength, I know I can do this. Can you please help me? Let me know what I should do. He never did that. Right from the very beginning, he was focused in on God, where the Israelites were focused in on this giant. It never was a question to him that he was going to go out there and win. He's already seen it in his life with the bear and the lion. He knew without a doubt that God was going to help him through this. And we know the story. He goes out there and he kills Goliath. And the Philistine army is on the run. And that day, everyone knew who the Lord God was. And he continued on. You know, he ended up becoming one of Saul's main commanders. It says whatever mission Saul sent him on, David was so successful, and Saul gave him a high rank in the army. This pleased all the troops and Saul's officers as well. He continued to focus in on his God, and he was successful in all of his battles. And when the men returned home after David had killed the Philistines, and the women came out from all of the towns of Israel to meet King Saul, they were singing and dancing with joyful songs. They were singing, Saul slayed his thousands, and David slayed his tens of thousands. Now you would think that the king would be happy about this. But the king had some other giants that he had to deal with. The giant of jealousy, the giant of pride. So instead of being happy about it, what did he now do to David? He turned on him, and he began to chase him down. David was on the run for a long time, but something never changed with David. He still focused in on the Lord. He had opportunity, as Saul was trying to track him down, he had opportunity to kill Saul. He was hiding out in a cave with his men, and lo and behold, Saul comes in there to relieve himself of all things. And his men are like, this is perfect. Now you can kill him and you can be done with him. But staying focused in on God, he said, no, I can't do that. This is God's anointed. But he did go up to his cloak and he cut a piece of it so that when Saul walked out, he made sure he knew. He goes, Saul, I could have killed you. I could have done that, but that is not what I am going to do. And Saul even says that you are great, David. You're going to make a great king someday and this and that. But does he stop pursuing him? No. Saul has another opportunity when he sneaks into his camp. And again, he shows him, I could have killed you. But see, he was focused. He was focused in on the Lord. And he knew the Lord was going to take care of him, just like he did against the lion and the bear and Goliath and all the battles that he had. And he didn't do it. Finally, Saul gets defeated and killed, and David becomes the king. As his life goes on, things change sometimes. Sometimes we lose focus. And David did. In 2 Samuel in chapter 11 and verse 1, it reads, in the spring, at the time when kings go off to war, David sent Joab out with the king's men and the whole Israelite army. They destroyed the Amorites and besieged Rabbah, but David remained in Jerusalem. In the spring, at times when kings go off to war, David did not. I cannot tell you how many people I arrested who were in the wrong place at the wrong time, making awful decisions. I could tell you story after story. I'm going to tell you one because you won't believe it. I didn't believe it when it happened. I get called, dispatched to a car deer accident. In Shiawassee County, those were dime a dozen. We got them all the time, cars hitting deers. So I go out there and I'm talking to the guy, and he didn't really need it for his insurance because he had an old beater car. He wanted it for the deer, so he wanted a car deer kill permit so that he could take the deer and process it. Really nice guy, and I'm sitting there talking to him, and I realize, I go, sir, how much did you have to drink today? And he looked, he had that shocked look, and I called you out here. Yes. A drunk driver called the state police out to his accident. And he was arrested that day. wrong place, wrong time, awful decisions. David, wrong place, wrong time, awful decisions. One evening, David got up from his bed and walked around the roof of the palace, and from the roof he saw a woman bathing. The woman was beautiful. I can almost see him go out onto the balcony or the roof, looking around, and I could almost see him looking around to see if anybody's going to see him. We think we can get away with stuff. We think we can cover up stuff. We think nobody's going to know. So what does he do? He calls to have him brought to his room. He lays with her, sends her home, and thinks nobody's going to know. But we know the story that she got pregnant. And this is where I see, again, in my job over and over, oh, I think I can get out of this. I think there's another way, so I'm going to go into another lie. I'm going to get her husband to come home, and I'll just get a report from him. I'll send him home, and then he'll be with his wife, and it'll be his kid, and nobody will know. But Uriah, who comes home, is focused in on God. And he says, I am not going to go lay with my wife when my men are out fighting on the battlefield. I am not going to do that. So you see, he was focused. So what does David do? Okay, now what's the next plan? What's the next plan? And he eventually makes a plan where he sends him a note with him back to the front line, and Uriah is ordered to go to the front line where it's most dangerous, and he's killed. And David, I think I got over this, and I'll be okay, and nobody's going to know. Now I'll marry Bathsheba, and she's going to have my wife, and then we'll be okay. If only the Lord didn't have prophets. And then Nathan was called into the scene. And Nathan goes to David, and he tells him the story of this rich man who had all this cattle and all this possessions, and there was this poor man, and all he had was this little ewe lamb. And when a special guest came, he doesn't take from his cattle, he takes this poor man's ewe lamb. And David is filled with anger. This man should die. Little did he realize that he was that man, as Nathan explained that to him. Only if he would have stayed focused like he had did most of his life. If when he went out onto that balcony and he looked and he saw there, instead of looking down there and instead of looking around to see, if he would have done what he had always done, is look up to the Lord and stay focused in on the Lord, he could have said, I'm not supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be out on the front line with my men. And if he'd have called that man not to bring the woman to him, but say, bring my chariot to me, get me out there. What a different story. This would have been another great story of David. But instead, he looked around and he made the mistake. We all find ourselves with giants in front of us. Goliath wasn't a giant to David. Lust was his giant. See, there's all kinds of giants out there. There's a giant of greed, selfishness, despair. Satan knows what your giant is. Satan tries to put it in front of you all the time. And he's hoping that you're not staying focused on God. He's hoping that when he puts that giant in front of you, you're looking around to see if anybody is going to see you fall to your giant. If there's anything that David's life can show you, is that when he focused in on the Lord, he was able to overcome anything. And when he focused in on himself, he overcame nothing. I don't know what kind of giants you have in your life, what kind of struggles you have, but all I can tell you is when that giant shows up, don't look around, look up and stay focused in on God, because he promised us that he will help us get through those giants. Because when we're focused in on God, we can accomplish anything. If we focus in on giants, we stumble. If we focus in on God, the giants tumble. So if you are struggling with a giant, if you need help, if you need prayers, please come. We have so many people here to help you. If you haven't made the Lord the most important thing in your life and you haven't become a Christian yet, I hope you realize that life gets so much better when you have the Lord on your side to help you through your struggles. I hope that whatever your need is, if you have any, you come while we stand and we sing.